Hey, welcome back. It's Sarah from Roadworthy. As you could tell by the outfit, the weather's changing. I am here to do an October reading highlights. October was another great reading month for me, and I feel like I've had a number of great reading months this year, and I feel like perhaps I'm honing in on my reading taste. Like I feel like I'm more consistently picking books that really work for me. And they're a little bit all over the map. And I feel like this month's reading highlights are no different. So let me hop into it. Speaking of different, I've got The Other Valley by Scott Alexander Howard. This is a speculative dystopian time travel book that's not like other time travel books. It's interesting. Howard is a philosophy PhD, and this is his debut. His bent towards philosophy really comes through in this book. We've got our protagonist who's a teen girl, and she lives in a valley. And the valleys on either side, East 1, East 2, East 3, right? East 1 is 20 years ahead. And then we've got West 1, West 2, blah, 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 are 20 years behind. And one day there is, and those borders between the valleys are guarded to prevent people from crossing over and disrupting, the timeline. And at one point she sees two people visiting the elite class in this society. Listens to petitions of people who want to visit another valley and grants permission or denies permission. And if you get permission, you are sort of on this guarded, very controlled visit. And at one point she sees two people clearly visiting, and she realizes those are the parents of a good friend of hers. And that sort of, kicks off all the action when she realizes her friend must be about to die. So what's interesting about this book is there's so much about like fate and self-determination. This, for lack of a better word, this book can be quite a mind fuck, in the sense that sometimes you're not sure, like, if her decisions, her actions are ruining her future, helping her prevent her friend's death. Like, there's so much in there. Is he doomed to die? Her friend, is Odile's friend doomed to die? Can she save him? Yeah, and just these varying puzzles of what to do. And then at one point she is in training for the Conseil, the elite group making these determinations. And she's presented with these scenarios. Do you grant permission? Do you not grant permission? And again, hearing the mental gymnastics and the ethical quandaries just was a really fun puzzle to ponder through in this book. So there's a lot about sort of memory and regret in here. Just, you know, again, it's speculative, dystopian, time travel book that is way more than that. There is a lot more meat on these bones than you may expect from this sort of genre fiction. So if you enjoy some philosophy in your reading, do pick this up because it's a lot of fun. And in fact, I've convinced my husband to listen to the audiobook. So there you have it. One person has listened to my recommendations. Next, I've got The Gift of Rain by Twan. And I finished this on a week where I wasn't able to post weekly reads. And I love Twan's writing. This is his debut, and it takes place during the 1940s, I guess the late 30s and the 40s in Malay, on Penang. And our narrator, I'm blanking on his name, Philip, is part of a wealthy white, family that owns, rubber mines and tin mines and all that. Or I should say rubber plantations. But Philip himself is of mixed ancestry. Although his father is white and a prominent businessman, Mr. Hutton, his mother is Chinese. And so he never feels like he belongs to Chinese culture, never feels like he belongs to white culture. And these themes of not quite belonging and duality sort of creep up throughout the book. Philip hangs behind while his family goes back to England to visit. And he meets Mr. Endo, who is a Japanese man living on an island that the Huttons own. And he becomes the Aikido student of Endo. And so we're watching their friendship, which feels a little charged, but is never explicitly homosexual. It's an interesting relationship. Anyway, and then we see the World War II unfolding, and the Japanese unexpectedly invading Malay by a land route, not by sea as the British were anticipating. So it's sort of what happens in Penang and blah, 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 blah. We also have the story being framed by Philip telling this story as he's an older man. And he's sort of both revered as being a savior, saving many people from the Japanese, as well as is vilified for being a conspirator with the Japanese. And again, you're left, which is he? Is he both? Is he neither? Again, that duality, never quite belonging anywhere question. Twan's writing is absolutely luscious and delightful. And, if you've read his books before, this is another one the writing is fantastic. This one is very interesting, particularly if you've read House of Doors, because it's the same period of time. In The Gift of Rain, he makes reference to M. Somerset Maugham's visit to Malaysia, and he makes reference to the guy who's the Chinese dissident, oh my God, who is in exile in Malaysia. I can't think of his name clearly, but he's also referenced in this book. So again, there's these funny tie-ins between these two books. And also a really interesting book to read since I read J.G. Farrell's Singapore Grip several months ago. Again, all three of these, or I should say those two books, were sort of milling around in my mind as I was reading this one. So that made for an interesting experience. The next one I want to mention is The Simple Art of Killing a Woman by Patricia Melo, translated from the Portuguese by Sophie Lewis. This is, we've got a young lawyer who accepts an assignment to go to Acre. I'm saying Acre, but I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, which is a province in Amazonia, to document violence against women in this, border area. And she goes because her boyfriend has recently become violent. And throughout the story, you learn that her mother was killed by her father. So this is clearly, it's a book about femicide in Brazil. She befriends Carla, who's the prosecutor prosecuting these cases of femicide. And she becomes particularly roped into a case against an indigenous girl who was raped, tortured, and murdered by three prominent young men in the community. And there's Melo is clearly tying in femicide with destruction of the rainforest, as well as sort of the complete disregard of indigenous rights. And this is brutal, but there is humor in it. There is some lightness in it. Melo is known in Brazil as a crime thriller writer. And this is sort of, I saw labeled in Goodreads as, genre bending. I don't know that I would go that far. This doesn't feel like a crime thriller to me, although I will say, as we get towards the end of the book, and sort of there's increasing pressure for these three young men to be held accountable for their crimes, there's also backlash against our narrator and Carla, the prosecutor. And as things go on, it gets a little like, wah, tense. And there's definitely a thriller aspect to the end of this book. This is just, it's obviously it's hard to read, but I think Melo does such a fantastic job weaving all of these different threads together. And it's not a very long book. So this is definitely one I think people should pick up. The last book I want to mention is Liars by Sarah Mancuso, which is about Jane and John and their child. And really, this is a book about, patriarchy and the evils of, heterosexual matrimony. It is infuriating. It is frustrating. It is can be funny. It's all the classic, Jane ends up giving up her career for John. John belittles Jane's contributions because it doesn't bring in any money, but yet she's taking care of their house, raising their child, and dealing with all the crap that John doesn't deal with. You know, he's infuriating. Yeah, it's, and if you, and Sarah Mancuso is an amazing writer. And I've read both her nonfiction and now her fiction, and I definitely want to pick up more of things that she writes. The last thing I want to mention is I did read an academic question by Barbara Pym. This is not a highlight of the month. This was a disappointment of the month. I feel like I'm doing a public service announcement here. If you're a Pym lover, like many of us on BookTube are, this is one you can skip. You know, this is it was published posthumously. The book wasn't finished when Pym died, and you know, it doesn't have the humor, it doesn't have the melancholy, it just doesn't have the Pymmian polish that you would expect. Yeah. So I just want to give a heads up that if you're interested in Barbara Pym, you want to pick up another one of hers, or you haven't yet read hers, don't pick this one up. All right. That is October's reading in a nutshell. A quick, that's it for now. Catch up with you later.